Welcome to China Paradigm, a show powered by Dashi Consulting, where we interview seasoned entrepreneurs and experienced managers in China about their business and experience in the country. Hello everyone, I'm Matthew David, the founder of Dashi Consulting and its podcast China Paradigm. Joining me today is Rodney Evans, the founder and CEO of Central Studios Shanghai. You have been in China, maybe Shanghai. You are going to tell us if it's the case since 2005, 15 years. So I haven't interviewed that many people who have been in China more than 12 years, like 15 years in the country. Just after joining the WTO, China joined WTO in 2001, before the 2008 crisis, which was, I believe, a change in China, where China accelerated. You opened a business in 2009, so just after the financial crisis, the global financial crisis, and I feel it was not in China. I feel we are living the first crisis in China, actually. And you started with rental of space and equipment, and after you moved to production and post-production for both photography and video. The space is amazing. I saw your document. We can feel that through your document, the 1,000 square meter studio with, I think, 3 rooms for studio and shooting, VIP rooms, etc., etc. We see that that's the key. The key is a space that you rented, that you want people to understand, because on your document you have a very detailed plan on how it is, how to use it, and how it was used as well. And that's the next thing I want to talk about. The clients. You have worked with Nike, Gap, Coca-Cola, Old Navy, Elle, Apple, and many others. We can see actually like Yves Saint Laurent, for instance, on your presentation. It's about 30 people now, the team, as far as I understand. Maybe you are going to update us about the impact of COVID, because things are changing for all of us. And about the industry, we talk about an industry when we look at statistics for about photography, about 500 billion yuan in China. So 500 billion yuan, it is said, for last year. That sounds big to me. I believe that's very influenced by the fact that wedding, children pictures, but also companies, the internet, and also and maybe also within the videos, I don't know, are using a lot of pictures. Actually, I'm just reading again, the 500 billion is including video. So it's more about production of content, photographies and videos. It's not a small industry. Thanks for being with us. I'll be a bit long today to introduce you and the industry. Would you like to add anything?
Well, firstly, thank you for having me here. It's always nice to share experiences. And your very comprehensive introduction. You sort of definitely touched on a lot of things there, and you've pretty much summarized the nuts of who we are and what we do. But that statistic is interesting, $500 billion industry. It's actually a statistic I've never really looked into. And what I do know, my sort of analysis on the industry is a bit more empirical, in that when we opened the business in 2009, I was working as a photographer at the time, and I came to China as a photographer. I was looking for a change of scene and wanted to move out of Australia, and there was an opportunity to come to China, so I came and discovered that the market was very undeveloped and there was a huge room to grow for commercial photography, and there was a lot of opportunity. So it was a buzz to be here, and obviously living in Shanghai at that time was great too. And but I knew that when we opened the studio, the market was still relatively untapped. And building our studio, we were the first international sort of level photo studio, and we pretty much got some widespread acclaim across China fairly quickly. And what's happened over the past 10 years is we've just seen the industry just go from strength to strength. There is increased professionalism, the quality of the photographers, the local photographers, the technicians, the crew, the creativity and the adaptation of technology is really world class here in China now. And I guess having had a studio business in operation for the past 11 years, I've really been at the coalface, having been able to witness that development. And from when we first opened, it was really quite underdeveloped, but it's just been steady the whole time. I guess you could say we caught a wave, and we've kind of been riding it ever since. And as the whole industry's grown, as social media has increased the demands for more and more content, albeit cheaper content, but its brands need a lot of content. So it's just a matter of adapting to have the flexibility to be able to catch the work when it comes.
What you mentioned international studio, that's something I picked in your presentation too. What make a studio international? What make you in 2009, one of the rare ones to be international? Is it the team? Is it the ability to work with international clients? What is it?
So when we built the studio, we had an opportunity to take a really beautiful space in the center of Shanghai. And prior to opening the business, I had already been working as a photographer in Shanghai, and then was working in a couple of other little operations, but really trying to do things to obviously do great work, and do great work to the standard that I was used to working at overseas, not just in terms of photo taking, but professionalism of the industry, the structure, the contracts, the services around the industry. And I always loved Shanghai. I always came here and saw these big, beautiful warehouses. And from my experience working here as a photographer, the studios that I'd been to, they just weren't up to scratch. You'd go there and you'd have to pay for everything, and they didn't have anything, and you'd have to just go to the studio first, see what they had, and then organize everything yourself. So the idea of opening Central Studios was to create this photo studio where professional photographers could come, and we just had everything that a photographer could possibly need for their shoot, whether it's polyboard reflector boards that were full length, like black, white. I can get a bit technical here and talk about some gear, but we just had a lot of accessories, a lot of technical equipment, specialized equipment that people wouldn't ordinarily have, and they wouldn't really know where to find. So all of a sudden we had this huge demand where people needed stuff, and we were just the place to go to get all of that stuff. So it's, and at the time there were one or two other rental places, but we really had a bit of a blue ocean opportunity there for a while. And of course, within a few years, there were other studios opened up. People saw what we were doing. People copied what we were doing. There were a couple of studios opened up around town. They stole all of my kind of quoting forms, my terms and conditions, my design layouts for the way we presented the studios, and I took that as a form of flattery. And but it was quite entertaining to see how other studios would open up and completely emulated some of the things that we'd done. Obviously as a sign of being successful. And so that's what I mean about international studios, is just creating this sort of full service, one-stop shop kind of building. And now as the companies develop, we still adopt this one-stop shop principle, but rather than just exclusively focusing on equipment rental and studio rental, the business itself, we've developed additional services and production services, creative services, and we offer a whole lot of other services around either working within our space or working outside. But just really being able to offer this sort of media production experience, production, asset creation experience for brands is sort of where we're at.
So I understand the location, the space was key to you. And I was checking when you were speaking where you are, where the address is. It's a pretty good address for people who know China and Shanghai more specifically. You are in between Xizangnanlu and Fuxinglu, and not that far from Luwan, which is a recent mall built by Capital Land, which is a good location. So I believe the rent has increased a lot since 2009, or you have you have secured the rent for 10 years or 20 years, because it used to be a factory, a sock factory. So I believe you are a bit protected here from people who would like to build on it, or developers, or to rent out to people to live in. How was it hard to keep it?
Look, I think we've been lucky. I think anyone that does business in China will agree that one needs a certain amount of luck when doing stuff. I mean, you need luck to go in your favor, and it's also, people can just get bad luck from unexpected places. In terms of our space, I was working in the building at the time, so I knew the landlords, and I knew the space, and it was derelict before we took it. So we had the opportunity to take it, and he's like, "Look, come and do your studio," because we were going to do the studio a year earlier with another partner, and a similar kind of thing on one of the upper levels of the building. And then in the end, the financial crisis came in 2008, and we said, "Okay, let's not do this now. It's a bit risky." And then I went my separate ways with that partner. And then I had the opportunity to take the ground floor, so we took it. And at the time, my now wife has just moved to China, and she's like, "What are we doing in China if we don't do something big?" So we built the studio. And at the time, they wouldn't really sign a long lease because that land was marked for demolition. And at the time we took it in 2009, there was very little around our studio. Yes, it was only 2 blocks from Xintiandi, 3 blocks from Xintiandi, but we'd walk out the door and it was just super local. Like, there weren't really any cafes or restaurants. There was where that Luan Mall is now, it was just a demolished Laofangzi. And so we kind of got there, and we've just watched the neighborhood come up around us, where now all of a sudden we are just in the middle of this beautiful, newly developed part of town with great facilities nearby. We've got 3 subway stops near our studio. We've got the mall across the road. And so, yeah, we've been lucky. I mean, we've got a very good relationship with our landlord. The rent has been going up over the 10 years, but it's been manageable. And, I think it's been a bit of a win-win situation for both us and the landlord. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the landlords like it because we have a lot of celebrities come to the studio. So every now and again, when they've got like their Lingdao coming down, or they want to sort of show off a bit, they bring people into the studio and have a look at the celebrity wall. And, it's kind of nice kudos for them. So, I think it works both ways.
Talking about, so the first step, we understand it was more about renting out to other photographers, to other producers, and then you moved in production and post-production. What are the biggest or the most important services you are selling to your clients within production and post-production? What are your clients using your service for? I understand they need pictures for billboard, they need pictures for the internet, they need video also for TV and so on. But what are what are you after mainly? What are you happy to sign?
So basically, I guess more than 80% of our business now comes from production-related services, as opposed to studio or equipment rental. And what that means is brands or advertising agencies contact us to produce their photo and video media assets, whether it's a photo shoot, a fashion campaign. We're now pitching for a couple of Double 11 campaigns. And these images are basically just used for marketing and advertising. They'll go up on Tmall, they'll be on their social media channels. Sometimes we see them all around town on billboards in subway stations. We've had, we do jobs for Puma, and the videos are in the big LED screen on the store on Huaihalu. And it's been great. Sometimes we walk down Huaihalu and there's like 3 or 4 stores, and they're like, "Yeah, we did that one. And there's kind of all our work is kind of like on video screens and billboards as we're going down Huaihalu, and that's a pretty nice feeling. I guess, probably there's just images that are out there, advertising stuff. We're not going to save the world with it, but it's nice and there's demand for it.
Do you feel the demand has changed with the internet? Because 2009, if I remember correctly, Tmall was not created yet, or it was just at its infancy. And the internet grew and grew and grew and needed more and more media assets, as you said. as the request changed for you? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we first opened the business, and back then it was still quite traditional. People would do a shoot, and you had your traditional outlets. We call them media channels. So you'd have your outdoor, out of home advertising (OOH). Then you'd have things like in store. You'd have online. You'd have print. People were still buying full page print ads back then in magazines. Posters and so on and so on. So there are a lot of very clearly defined media channels. These days, it's really more about digital and online, and sometimes things will be in-store and sometimes things will be outdoor. But pretty much everything we do is digital. Now, back then, when I was first getting into photography and we were negotiating usage rights, people would say, "Oh yeah, we just need this for online." And back then, they'd say, "We just need small images. We don't need big images online," because back then, internet speeds and device resolutions were much slower and smaller. So people didn't need as high quality assets to put online. So people got used to getting a cheaper rate for putting stuff online. The irony now is that everything is digital. People are really only seeing stuff on digital, and brands and clients are still coming back and saying, well, we need it for digital, so, it's not a big campaign or it's not a small thing. But more people are going to see those assets now on their digital, on their WeChat channel than people might ordinarily see on an outdoor billboard.
Has it impacted the way you work and your pricing, for instance? I imagine in my mind that you would need more media assets when you're online, or you do maybe more.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, it's impacted a lot of things. It's impacted a lot of things. I mean, the pricing. It's impacted the pricing, because brands need so many more digital assets because they have so many digital channels between social and e-commerce. So but their budgets haven't gone up. Their annual marketing spend hasn't gone up. So all of a sudden they're coming to you and going, well, we need this campaign. We need this campaign. We need shoots all the time. But what's happening is, because they need more and more content, their overall budget needs to be spread out across a lot more executions. So as a result, the budgets for each particular thing get smaller and smaller. Now, we're sort of trapped in the middle in a sense, because then on the other hand, you've got a lot of professionals, photographers, video guys who are getting well known and in demand. And as China would have it, they want to charge a lot of money. So the people that are creating the stuff, the actual artists and stuff that we work with, they've got a lot of pricing power. So the whole dynamics of the industry has changed. I mean, our margins have certainly come in over the past few years. The big sort of campaign, the big overall brand campaign is we're seeing fewer and fewer, because what's happening is brands are just becoming tactical. Pretty much the marketing calendar is driven by Tmall. So in the old days, brands might have an annual campaign which goes across all channels, and it's not trying to sell anything. It's just a branding campaign. Think about an airline. An airline, maybe not the best example during these times, but traditionally airlines would have massive brand campaigns as global. So wherever you go around the world, you see an ad for that airline, you recognize it because that is the touch point of that airline. Coca-Cola might have a massive branding ad and then very regional, specific, tactical ads. But what's happening now is Tmall rules the roost, and everything is driven around Tmall shopping calendar. So we're getting like a Chinese New Year campaign, we're getting a Valentine's Day campaign, we're getting a Super Brand Day campaign, a Double 11, a Double 12, a 618. There are all these commercial events that are basically governing how brands allocate their budgets and their tactics. And the big overall brand campaign doesn't really happen very much anymore. And it's very hard, I guess, for brands to do that. And maybe they just don't believe that there's the brand loyalty, or they're creating brand loyalty in different ways rather than the big overall campaign.
So we talked about the change of the internet. We talked about a change over time, development of China. We haven't talked about COVID-19 and how it has impacted the industry. I believe it has impacted your industry because you need to move in a space, you need to shoot somewhere. You're not pretty digital. How have you navigated at that time?
Okay, so when COVID first happened, obviously we were overseas at the time. And we didn't know what would happen. So we went into damage control, tried to just cut our costs straight away. So we managed to reduce a lot of our costs for February, for March, and sort of by the end of March, things were sort of coming back where we were starting to get full team back on board. And really, at the beginning of April, our clients started returning to us needing stuff done. And I guess because we're in the marketing industry and we're a business-to-business operation, brands still needed to produce stuff to get to their consumers. So they needed to use our services. So we had to find a way to work. And, you know, it's actually been a pretty good year for us. We're actually up on last year. And
Really?
and what we've been seeing is brands' budgets have come down a bit. They're kind of blaming COVID and saying, look, we've got to do, but they're still coming with jobs. They're still coming with shoots. And then we're getting clients who would normally go overseas to shoot, and they're coming to China because they can't go anywhere. So we have domestic clients that are staying in China, and we're getting overseas clients that are asking us to do stuff for them because they can't do stuff. So we've sort of benefited quite well from the situation. And, you know, I think we're feeling quite confident towards the end of the year. And even without the incoming stuff from overseas, I feel that the domestic economy is very strong and brands are just getting back to doing stuff. They just have to spend money on advertising and marketing assets to stay relevant. They just got to keep making noise. So I believe that things are pretty optimistic here in China.
Talking about the size of your current business, would you mind sharing a bit of metrics about 2019, if you are okay to share revenues, number of clients, or a number of projects, to have an idea of what size you have reached now? Is it fair to say you are around 30 people in 2019?
Yeah, so we're 30 people. I don't share revenue, but I can give you a couple of stats. I mean, typically, you know, every year we've sort of grown steadily. 2019 was a bit of a flat year for us, but during 2019, we did a lot of restructuring and restructured some of the services and restructured some of the way we do our accounting, and really went to a model where we started to account for our direct labor in terms of the people that are running the sales. So what that effectively did was reducing our optical gross margins, but the flow through to the bottom line was a lot more visible. So we were basically putting our staff above the gross margin line. So what that means now, because we've developed an in-house post-production department, you know, we're in a situation now where there's an extra up to 20-25% of margin that we might have had to have outsourced for some post-production we can keep in-house. So that's really flowing through to our bottom line this year.
I see.
And so that's been a really positive step, and something that we took care of over the past 18 months, and the effects are really flowing through now.
How is the team organized then? We talked a little bit before the interview. You talked with Sophia, and you said you are not doing much of a sales effort, for instance. I mean, it's more about word of mouth, reputation. So what you don't? As far as I understand, you don't have a big sales team. What are the different departments in your company? Organizing the space, I understand, managing the space, but also production in itself, photographers.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So we have we had two main operational departments, and one's called the photo department, the other one's called the production department. And I sort of liken the studios to the retail side of the business, where we have people that come in every day to rent the studio or rent equipment. It's a much smaller ticket, but there's much more of them. So that's the photo department, and that probably accounts for less than 20% of the business. Mm-hmm. And the studio itself, it's not hugely profitable. It's really more about servicing, being there for the infrastructure, and it's the engine for the whole business. The production department are the guys who are really client-facing, dealing with our bigger accounts, bigger tickets, our recurring customers. And we generally do have a lot of recurring customers at that level. Once we start to work with people, they like us, they trust us, and they come back. Then more recently is the post-production department, which has really been in operation since the beginning of last year. And that itself now is starting to become its own profitable revenue center. So that's really positive. And then I guess then there's admin, the people that the bean counters and the HR and keep the back of house in operation. So the structure is, we sort of have a head of each department, and we have regular meetings, but yeah, we have a little bit of intercompany billing, and so if we have a production department that's billing for studios and equipment, we make sure that the photo department gets their fair share. It's kind of a standard operation, and we can kind of we've got good visibility on the costs and expenses for all parts of the business.
Interesting. So you have a rebilling inside your company for different departments if they use a material and it's not rent out to clients or not rent out to other departments. You have set up such a system and ERP, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's not foolproof, but it's a trade-off of how much detail do you want to get for a basic understanding. I mean, our business is not that big where I need to drill down and really be really strict about every part of it, but it gives us a pretty general overview, and obviously we can adjust things as we need to, but it allows us to really make sure that everyone gets their slice of the pie. And it just gives us a bit more visibility in terms of determining where we want to be spending money, or do we want to be buying equipment, or do I want to be hiring here or there? And it's just a much better management tool now. And that's really only the past couple of years that that's started to take shape as well.
Talking about management, I'm very interested in understanding how you see management of artists. You are in a world where you manage artists, you manage people who have a sense of art, a sense of design, a sense of how to take pictures. How different is it than managing other companies? How do you reveal this artistic touch from people within your company or within yourself? Do you have a specific culture? Have you set up some processes at the opposite, which help being more creative? What's your view on that?
Okay, so we have one or two in-house photographers who are probably a little bit more junior, and in terms of managing artists, we generally work with a lot of independent artists. So we don't actually have an artist rep agency. We instead we offer an art buying service. And what that means is clients come to us with their brief, and we will suggest the best artist for the job, whether it's a video director or a photographer. And quite often we don't have a say in who those artists are, especially when working with celebrities that they've already chosen which photographer is going to do the job. So then it's just a matter of arranging things. But when we work with artists and we propose artists, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, we obviously listen to what their needs are. Everyone has a different shooting style. Everyone has different requirements. And when doing budgets, we need to just make sure that we take that into account to offer that. And when we do a pitch and we offer 2 or 3 different photographers, it's very important that each budget reflects the needs of those photographers. And obviously when we bring artists onto the job, we need to protect their space. So at the end of the day, things are commercial. We need to give the client what they want, but we also need to protect the artists in terms of their ability to create and their ability to produce the best work. So it's a bit of a management position where we have to make the artists feel like they're being respected and getting what they need, but we also need to make sure that we deliver what the client needs.
Do you feel you are acting like an agent for them a little bit, from those artists, to place them actually on some work and advertise them?
Look, like I said, we don't rep people. I mean, we've discussed whether we go into that side of the business, and the problem in China is that if you were going to represent someone, no one's really loyal here. It's very difficult to be an agent for someone and have their undivided loyalty, because in China everyone always knows someone who knows someone, and the people here, the market here is hardwired to cut out the middleman. And we see it all the time. We get crew on set, and then clients will meet the people on set and then just go direct the next time. So, the agency thing is not something we really want to do. I mean, an agent is someone, I guess, who has a vested interest in finding work for someone and managing that relationship. But we're just not that focused on any one person. We have people we like to work with and we like to push more often than others. But we're realistic about the situation, and we don't want to be in a situation where those artists are losing work opportunities just because we're trying to rep them and stuff. So we still leave them the ability to go and do what they need to do, but we just have the option to work with them whenever we need to.
I see. Talking about photographers, artists, we know some very famous photographers from the West, like Avda, Cartier-Bresson, Yann Bertrand. Have you found similar photographer stars in China? Do you feel there are some photographers which are becoming stars, like Avda? I've worked with Revlon, or Cartier-Bresson has become very famous. Do you feel there is this momentum now in China with photographers and famous ones becoming famous?
100%. I mean, at the top, probably the most well-known would be Chen Man, and she's a Beijing photographer, and she was one of the first people to come and shoot in our studio when we opened, and she was kind of walking around the studio with her assistant, taking shots of the studio and admiring what we'd done there. But she's super well known, and she's a celebrity in her own right now, and there are a lot of other big photographers who have massive followings here because they're doing all the celebrity stuff. And I think Chen Man would definitely be the most well-known Chinese name photographer. And but there are definitely more and more. I think the interesting thing is that the guys who are at the top here, they really don't care about the rest of the world. They'd like to kind of go overseas and work here and work there, but a lot of them are just so content and so busy being the big fish in the big pond here that it's just enough for them. I think, and also the style is different. I mean, there is a very real Chinese style. There's a very real aesthetic that might not translate to shooting perhaps overseas.
So you confirm that they are famous within China, but not yet reached the international level like some photographers in the West might have, both in Europe and the US and maybe the rest of the world. Is it your...
No, I mean, there's only a few. I mean, Chen Man would be the one that's really broken through. And because she's a female, she's beautiful. She's a great package. Her shots are interesting. The work she was doing 10 years ago is probably far more interesting than what she's doing now, because she really had a vision. She really was creating very current images that was a strong statement on feminism, on beauty, and China's place in the world. But now, she's been hugely successful, and I think she works on being she's trying to get into directing a bit, and she's also a celebrity. So, I think probably, I don't know, if she still has that desire to create like she did back then when she was younger. And that's another thing, is that the top Chinese photographers we see here, they're so busy working that they're not really doing their own projects.
I see.
And what I note from all the top photographers in the West, the guys that are working all the time, they're always doing their own projects. They kind of have this passion to really be this photographer, and it's really interesting. And I think the other thing is that in the West, photographers really create their own style. But I find that a lot of the top photographers here all become a bit generic, and they're all kind of just want to do these nice, clean images, and they see what the other top photographers are doing. So people try to just, there's a lot of emulation going on. And the more interesting stuff is coming out of the younger photographers who are really, really kind of showcasing their own generation and a statement on the millennials and the Gen Z kind of thing.
I like to understand a bit more about the industry. We came up with a big number like $500 billion RMB. To be honest, that's a very big number, including a lot of different things. But As far as I understand, from my perspective, I have not found studios like Harcourt. I don't know if I pronounce correctly, but Harcourt Studio taking pictures of those very famous people in the West. I know they tried to enter China before. I'm seeing a competition with a lot of freelancers as well as you were starting with. How is the market structured so far? How do you see the market structured? In Shanghai speaking, not only Shanghai.
So you've got the photographers and the directors, and you've got production companies like us, and then that's in terms of the commercial sort of levels. Then you've got big e-commerce studios, and the big
E-commerce
studios who are doing big e-commerce studios who are doing lots and lots of brands, and they have like bay after bay of photos set up. And in terms of the market structure, I mean, it's still very much driven by production companies here, and I don't know the company you mentioned, but I mean, it's a pretty basic structure where you have production companies who are often getting the work. Sometimes brands are going direct to photographers. What's happening now is photographers and directors are starting to set up their own production companies, and just trying to get as much as they can. I mean, I think it's a very China thing that if people see a business opportunity, they want to try and grab as much of it as possible. So whereas in the West, you'd have a much more traditional structure of an industry of production companies or photo reps and agencies, and that's the way it is. Over here, you've got PR companies, PR and event agencies who are trying to grab slices of social media, and all of a sudden they're producing campaigns and creative. You've got creative agencies who are wanting to get a bigger slice of the budget, so they want to manage the production in-house. You've got KOLs and influencers who where brands will go straight to the KOL and the influencer to create jobs because they've got their own particular style and their own team. So those people are starting their own productions. So, everyone's just trying to grab as much of the market as possible, and just a matter of finding out how to navigate that.
You mentioned e-commerce studio. How has the technology impacted your industry? Basically, people take billions of pictures now every day. You may not name that photography, but pictures is part of our life of daily life now, and the internet, the technology also with equipment has evolved. What are the main trends you see, main changes in terms of technology?
Obviously, there's a huge demand for images. You're absolutely right. From e-commerce to social, with weekly WeChat updates, there is an insatiable thirst to produce more images. The bigger changes we see moving forward, I think, will be in computer-generated images, computer-generated backgrounds, virtual environments, animation, avatars. I think we're going to be seeing soon a lot of virtual celebrities, where, people like, big Chinese celebrities like Lei Zhang or Dilly Raba and a lot of these big, massive stars here, they can be shooting 4 different places on the same day because they're going to create a virtual computer-generated version of themselves. And all of a sudden, the production won't be so dependent on celebrity availability. And I think that's going to happen in the future for sure. And there's going to be brands just creating virtual people. I think digital. I think marketing. It's not so much about photography, but it's more about marketing. I think you can look at the rise of esports and the Gen Z and the way that they're adopting technology, and all of a sudden these people are gaming in virtual worlds, and you're seeing a whole lot of brands starting to interact in virtual environments. So all of a sudden, things don't need to be as traditional. Things don't need to be as black and white. The retail experience is changing. So the way that images are used in the retail experience, the images and technology are used differently. There's so much happening on so many levels, and China is at the forefront of that. And people here love technology, and they're not afraid to use it. And it's all in the palm of their hand. And the brands that adapt to that the best are going to be the ones to win in the future. The brands that can really see where it's going and just keep moving and don't get caught up doing the traditional stuff.
How do you get ready for that? Because part of your business, 20% is about rental of equipment, space and equipment. So you have to be, I believe, ready to equip yourself with new technologies and be ready to answer the demand. How do you keep up with the pace, and where do you get new information? How do you do?
Yeah, so I think, look, there's still going to be demand for what we provide, because even though brands might be adapting to use the new technologies, they still need to create the assets. Like, on one hand, yes, maybe they don't need us because it's all done in a computer, but there's a lot of stuff that people still need to shoot on green screen, for example. So they might be creating virtual environments, but maybe people they still need to shoot. So they still need a space to shoot that. So I still believe that it's a little bit resilient. My bigger concern about the rental side is really not the technology. It's just the fact that it's just becoming a commodity, that there's so many people out there who are renting stuff for little money that, I'm really not focusing on investing huge amounts in expensive equipment, because in this market, it becomes commoditized very quickly.
I see.
And my focus is on services. My focus is on people right now, and finding the right people to service the future, to find the right skills and talent to bring into the company so we can adapt and meet those challenges head on.
I like to end the interview with a couple of questions I frequently ask to the guests. First one being about books that inspired the guest in his or her journey as an entrepreneur. Would you have some books to share? Could be books, but it could be also some other formats like movies or others.
Yeah, sure. So I think not so much as an entrepreneur, but I did read a great book recently, and I was just, as an entrepreneur, I've been over the years get caught reading a lot of these management books and scaling up books and books, gazelles. I'm a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. So through that, we get access. Everyone is sharing their best books and so on. And part of EO is the system of scaling up, following the Gazelle's management system. And the Scaling Up series is all about, how do you 10x, how do you 100x your business through some basic principles, people, cash, strategy, and so on. So that's always been ever present during my life in EO, and it evolves and has updates over the years. But as a result of kind of reading all of these management books, I kind of just wanted to read a really good fiction. It's been a long time since I've just read a good sort of fiction story. And I just read The Overstory by Richard Powers. And The Overstory is an amazing read. It's an amazing book. And it really opened my eyes to the symbiosis of man and nature. And it's all about trees. And it's a book about trees and the destruction of forests, as told through the stories of 9 unrelated people, and their lives become connected and intertwined. And it's kind of a metaphor for how what the book presents is how trees are really dependent on other trees in their ecosystem. So if you cut down a tree here, there might be a tree 20 meters or 100 meters away that's going to die, because they're just, whether it's the root system or maybe that tree feeds a bug that pollinates that. And I think the forests and the natural ecosystems are so much more complex than we give them credit for. And, you look at the destruction that's going on around the world of nature and habitat, and it just seems like so ignorant and dangerous. So that's kind of, it was a beautiful story. It was superbly written. And I think it won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction or something. So that's something I'd recommend if
I understand
people are interested in the environment.
I understand that you like the style, but what resonates to you? You live in Shanghai, which is it's very urban, very busy. And what did resonate to you with this book? What do you feel could resonate with others?
Look, I guess it's just a metaphor for I guess how codependent people are with the planet, how codependent people are with each other, and it's not just about people living next to forests, but it's also people living next to people. And I think in the background of what's going on in the world with the pandemic and global politics, There are issues. It does touch on pandemics in the book, and these issues are highly documented. I mean, what's going on right now? The knowledge has been out there for years, and I guess people choose to ignore it. People are too focused on their own life, and people are too focused on money and business. And I think the important thing is that beyond all of this business, beyond everything that we do as an entrepreneur, as a day-to-day level, if we can't manage the most basic resources that are given to us, then what's it all for? So I guess for me, I'm also, looking to the future, and, I have a son, and trying to do what we can to balance, a successful business and also some social responsibility. So it's important just to keep it real and keep a firm understanding of sustainable issues.
I feel you have also put into action what you just said with the Red Crate product, right? And once a day.
Yeah. So look, every year we do a fair day, and it's a great event. We've got the next one coming up on September 13th. And last year we did the Red Crate project, and what that was really just to try to get people to think about not throwing stuff away. And we issued these red crates to see how they'd be used. I'm looking at mine over here. There's a box of a crate of records in the corner, and and it's interesting. We're about to do a follow up to see where all those red crates are. But the idea that you take something home, and instead of trying to just single use stuff, recycle, upcycle, repurpose. And it was just to try to make a statement about that and to see how people behave with that.
I don't know if I'm over-optimist, but I feel that there is an awareness now about those issues in China.
Definitely an awareness. I see a lot more people with their own drinking bottles. Another thing we did was we banned plastic bottles from our staff, so no one's allowed to drink. It's a bit hard to tell the customers, but certainly from our crew, we cut down on that. We have drinking stations all through the studio, and you're seeing it in the streets. The government now has got their garbage divided, and people at every level are becoming conscious of it, separating the garbage. And there's still a long way to go, and maybe there's greater efficiencies that could be created in the system that's being put in place. However, it's getting there, and I think this country more than ever has the ability to leapfrog the rest of the world in terms of environmental policy and sustainability. I think they have to, because China needs its people to survive, and there's too many people here for it to fail. So they will find a way to just mandate stuff happening. And I'm just dumbfounded of what you see in some countries overseas, that people are still creating policies that deliberately destroy the environment.
Yeah. I was still surprised that there's some way to go, because the batteries, for instance, are not separated from the rest of the rubbish. So the batteries which are very polluting, and there is no specific trash to put. What do you read to stay up to date about China as a foreigner? I don't know. Do you read Chinese fluently?
No. I don't read the Chinese news press. So. Look, I follow a couple of industry blogs, newsletters, things about the luxury industry or the ad industry, things like Jing Daily or Campaign Asia, and that gives me news about what the brands are doing and what the influencers are doing and what the platforms are doing and so on. I also there's a couple of other WeChat accounts, something like Radii is very interesting. It's just a bit of gives you some offbeat stories, a little bit more youth-driven, but some offbeat stories about what's happening in various parts of the country and overseas. And I like the Cynical podcast hosted by Kaiser Kuo is really interesting for some discussion of very topical issues, political or historical issues, and generally quite well balanced.
Interesting. Yeah, Cynic has been in place for a long time. It's very, very deep. You need to already know China to be able to follow.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of nice to be listening to that. I guess there's a lot of history there.
What book on China then, or again, other formats? It could be movies or other formats. Would you recommend for someone who want to understand more about China?
Look, I read a great book a couple of years back by Mario Cavolo, and it was called China, the Big Lie. And it gave some incredible insights into the cash economy in China and how much it's fueled the rise of the middle class. And he gave some really beautiful anecdotal stories about people who were making a ton of cash. And, you know, these are people like on the street corner selling jembing every morning, you know, the little sort of hot plate pancake. And, you know, for literally people go in and for 50 cents or $1 will buy one. And they have a little tin of money, and now they've got the QR codes for payment, and they're just pumping it out. And they've got very low overheads, and I'm sure they're not paying tax. And they have hundreds of thousands of RMB stashed under their bed, literally. And it's really interesting because he gives a lot of great examples, and you see that. You know, you've seen how people have got wealthy. That even people just selling fruit and vegetables here are just making a lot of money, and they're doing it and they're saving it so their kids can have a better life and putting their kids through university. And that's kind of a real eye-opener. Maybe a little bit less relevant now as the economy turns a little bit more digital and the government's trying to regulate things a lot more. There's another book I want to read. I just heard the guy talk about it, Chris Fenton, called Feeding the Dragon. And Chris Fenton was a president of DMG Entertainment for many years, and he discusses the influence of the rise of Chinese soft power and propaganda in Hollywood. And I think it sounds like a microcosm for almost any industry, and very topical in the current environment, how China is using its muscle and flex and economic carrot to make sure that their message is being touted on various platforms in various industries.
Where are you from yourself?
I'm from Australia.
How do you feel about the relationship with Australia those days? It has deteriorated, right, from last year?
Yeah, look, it's obviously interesting. I mean, it's a little bit disappointing. I mean, I think on one level, I think Australia is right to be standing up for what they believe in. I think the response from China is being a little bit over dramatic, like a kid that got his candy stolen from him. But look, it is what it is. Sorry, that's a terrible phrase to be saying, but I think, I think it will blow over. I think it will blow over so long as things calm down in the China-US relationship. But look, I mean, it's a very interesting period of history that we're going through on many levels, not just Australia, but all countries, and certainly China's position in the world. It's reaching new heights and obviously greater than ever importance. And people need to balance those relationships, and it needs to be a two-sided relationship where both parties need to try to create win-win situations. And I think what you're really seeing is a clash of values and culture, whereas China typically has a culture where people don't criticize, whereas in the West, that's what democracy is built on, the free right to criticize openly what people and governments are doing. And I think it's just a debate that China doesn't want to get into, so they're just behaving the way they do.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get better. We got some product delayed because of the tension between Australia and China, so we can feel it a little bit. About productivity tools, we are all very disturbed by WeChat all the time, ringing. What productivity tool do you use? How do you organize your digital life with all those apps and WeChat and distractions?
Well, the first rule is I turn my WeChat notifications off. So unless I'm actually looking at my phone, I won't know about any chats or calls coming through. So otherwise it's just impossible. And generally turn email notifications off. Any digital notifications I pretty much turn off, except for my morning alarm. And in terms of productivity tools, for the company, we've tried a few over the years. We use Trello to manage our social media program and schedule. We've tried Asana, we've tried Taskwork, we've tried other productivity project management tools. The problem is that if not everyone buys in and keeps it up to date, it all just falls down. And I think a lot of the teams sometimes feel like it's double work and double entering. And so So we've sort of stopped using that. On a personal level, I was using Evernote for all my notes and tags, and I've gone back to using Apple Notes a lot lately just because of its simplicity, and it's becoming more and more functional. So I think I'm going to sort of pivot out of Evernote and get everything back into Apple Notes, try and start organizing things a little better and just cleaner and simpler. I think I ended up keeping far too many notes that are unimportant.
Yeah, I heard someone who used Evernote and saying it. I recall it Nevernote because it's too hard to find back how you organize things and so on. It's becoming too complicated, and not on Apple. Actually,
it's also becomes quite slow. I'm finding it quite slow here in syncing.
In China?
And there's a lot of free. I don't know if it's China specific or just the software. When you have more and more data, but syncing and trying to find the stuff, there's always a bit of a lag. It's just annoying.
If you had extra time, what would you do? Would you start another business? Would you double down on a product like Red Crate? What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, if they had extra time, we'd love to do more projects like the Red Crate and certainly more environmental initiatives. I mean, if I had some extra time, I'd probably love to be a bit more supportive of my wife, who has non-stop creative ideas, she's a designer and she's always coming up with beautiful product ideas and brand ideas. So it would be nice to be able to devote more time to her and help out. So maybe that's life after Central Studios. Who knows?
What about surprising experiences in China? I think all have very surprising, unexpected experience. What would be the one you would mention if someone is asking you for the most surprising one?
I think what's great about China is wherever you go. Generally, wherever you go, you're going to see something that's funny and surprising. But certainly I've traveled to some pretty remote places and been surprised at some of the things that you find, whether it's the deserts in Inner Mongolia, where there's resorts in the middle of the desert and so on. But once, before I opened Central Studios, I used to travel around taking photos around China, and we were in Sichuan, and we were hiking up to the top of Ermeishan for a sunrise and to go up there and do some documenting on the top of the mountain. It's a pretty well-known tourist spot. So I thought, look, we'll go up early and get some landscape shots before the crowds and get up there. And we'd sort of found this spot that we thought was nice, and we were high up on the mountain and we're overlooking this sea of clouds and the sun's coming up in the east, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And all of a sudden, we just kind of heard this buzz and this chatter, and we sort of looked around, and just on another part of the mountain, there were hundreds of thousands of people just waiting for the sunrise. And we thought we'd sort of got up there early to be this exclusive thing, but there was a hotel on the top of the mountain, and people were up there waiting. And as soon as the sun peeked up from above the clouds, there was this massive cheer, and it certainly broke the serenity of the moment. So I think the surprising thing is just, or perhaps the unsurprising thing is just really how many people there are, and there are people everywhere.
True. Actually, the fact that 1.4 billion people in this country, converting something is the number of buildings you have. Like it's forest of buildings in Shanghai, for instance. And there are many cities with forest of buildings. I always tell people visiting me, in this compound where I live in Shanghai, there are as many people as the village where my parents are living in France. So the size of everything is very different.
Yep.
I like to end with two more questions, which are two sides of the same question, which is what unexpected success or unexpected failure you have witnessed, seen in China, which stayed in your mind and you didn't expect it to succeed or to fail, either as in the society or either as business.
Look, I think the most, well, not the most, but certainly an unexpected success is our Fair Day that we have every year. I mean, it's something that we started back in 2010. It's just a way to engage with people that we work with. We would open up our studios, and all the production crew and the stylists and industry people would just come down and sell their secondhand stuff. And it was just a kind of great way to have a social. And it's just evolved into this great market day. In terms of being probably the most hotly anticipated sort of market fair day in Shanghai. And we only do it once a year, and we do it entirely on our terms. So it's not like one of these other markets around town where they have to rent space and they've got to sell stalls and it's very profit driven. We just do it to create this event where we invite artists and designers, and it's a really great mix of the community. And now, we get more than a couple of thousand people usually coming down to enjoy. So it's great. It's nice to see it's coming up again, and we're all excited for it.
Yeah, that I think there is a misunderstanding I feel with people who don't live in China, is that you can create events, you can create things easily in China, and you are not that controlled. Actually, things are pretty open. It's a very difficult to understand where the limit is in terms of what you can create and how freedom you can have to create initiatives, and what you cannot. I mean, there are some topics you cannot cover, but like defend the environment, as you did with the Red Crate project, and so on, is possible.
Absolutely. I mean, I think now obviously there are a lot more rules, but certainly 10 years ago and in the early years of my time in China, you could do anything. You just do it until you get told not to do it, and then
That's a paradox, right?
And then you learn to adapt.
Yeah. What about a failure you saw in China? Not necessarily you lived, but you saw maybe a company fail in China, or something in society fail in China that you have witnessed over years, and you were surprised. You wouldn't expect they would fail. I have been surprised that Carrefour had to leave China. I've been surprised that no retailer have succeeded in China.
Did Carrefour leave China?
Yeah, they left China 2 years ago. They sold to Suning for $100 million. Yeah, which is very little. So you can still see their name, but it's owned 80% by Suning. So basically by Alibaba. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I mean, look, that kind of stuff. I mean, you're seeing it now globally. And I mean, look, the failure, I didn't, in answer to this question, I mean, the biggest failure right now is just the American presidency and the disintegration of democracy. But I mean, in terms of China, I guess I'm a bit surprised, at the failure of China to really be able to, I think what's happening on a global political level is a massive failure, both in America and China, Australia, like all of these countries. I mean, I think it's just paranoia and everyone putting up the walls, and I think it's completely unproductive. Obviously, we've devoted big part of our life to be here, and our lives in China are dependent on an effective global economy. And I think it's very sad that, there is just increased protectionism happening around the world right now, and everyone stands to lose. I mean, people in China will be a little bit ringwalled because in itself it's just this huge economy. But the opportunity is so much greater if the world is open. So, I guess the next 70 days is going to be interesting, and touch wood, things move back to a more state of normality post-election. But definitely the playing field now for China, for America, it's definitely moved. I mean, even if Biden gets in, it's not going to return to its old ways. So we'll see what happens.
Sure, that was unexpected. I wouldn't have expected to be that fast, the change to be that fast. I would have believed that would have been step by step, the rebalance of power. Interesting, yeah. Thanks for joining the podcast. I really enjoyed your answers about the books. I mean, I've never heard about them on China and the one you recommended. Very different from what I get from other guests. So thanks for sharing. I hope you enjoyed. I did. And thanks for
your time.
Thanks. Have a good day,
Okay.
everyone.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye.